If you go looking for finals MVP winners that still spark real debate among NBA fans, you will not have to dig very deep. Some of those arguments never really settle. They just cool down for a few years and then reappear whenever someone digs up the box scores. And when you line up the most discussed cases side by side, one name tends to stand out, not because he is the most famous, but because among the close calls, Paul Pierce actually has the strongest claim. That is not the take most people expect when the conversation starts. The obvious emotional argument belongs to Kevin Garnett. He was the spiritual leader and defensive anchor of that 2008 Boston team. If you value presence, leadership, and the feeling that the entire system collapses without one player, then Garnett feels like the correct answer. But that feeling is not the only criterion, and once you pull apart how those Celtics actually functioned on offense, Pierce separates himself from the rest of the core in a way that matters in a finals MVP discussion. Pierce was not a system unto himself. He was not a LeBron or a Jokic, a player who generates the entire offensive base just by being on the floor. And he was not an apex hard solution scorer in the mold of Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, or Kawhi Leonard, the kind of player whose job is to take a possession that has already broken down and turn it into a good look anyway. The 2008 Celtics did not really have either archetype at an elite level. What they had was Garnett rebuilding their defensive identity, and then a committee approach on offense where Rajon Rondo and Ray Allen kept the machine running. In that structure, Garnett and Pierce effectively functioned as two number 1.5 options. But even with Garnett's two-way gravity and his emotional hold on the team, the scoring weight tilted toward Pierce when Boston needed a bucket. Pierce was a strong, patient isolation wing who understood how to use his body and footwork without dominating the ball or making the offense stall. He would catch, let the game breathe for a beat, and then attack. His game looked sticky in a microscopic view, a lot of shoulder fakes and slow pivots, but it fit cleanly into a larger, structured offense. He gave you the best of both worlds, a true scoring threat who did not require you to build the entire possession around him and who did not disappear off the ball. That profile is almost a kinder, more functional version of Carmelo Anthony. You did not worry about Pierce as your lead scorer, and you did not worry that his off-ball presence was too faint to matter. Was he an all-encompassing franchise pillar? No, his defense, playmaking, and off-ball impact were solid but not special, and some of them were honestly a little loose. But on a team that already had a mature system, his level as a go-to perimeter scorer was absolutely good enough to win a title. In the 2008 finals, Pierce became Boston's clearest half-court scoring release valve and won the award. Garnett remained the defensive and emotional center of the team, while Allen and Rondo supplied essential support within the committee offense. That context matters because when you move to the 2004 Detroit Pistons, the case for Chauncey Billups gets much murkier. Everything about those Pistons was more extreme in its physicality and more evenly distributed in its responsibilities. The defensive foundation rested on Ben Wallace, Rasheed Wallace, and Tayshaun Prince, a long, roaming, grab-and-bump wall that suffocated possessions before a ball handler could ever get comfortable. Offensively, the team was built on a collective flow, with multiple pivot points rather than one clear table setter. Billups was the initiator. He was the one who started actions and distributed opportunities. But Rasheed Wallace's post-ups and face-up craft carried real weight in that system. His scoring ripples were not dramatically below Billups' impact. When a possession stalled and someone had to conjure a shot late in the clock, Billups usually held the ball and got the final look, and he did hit big shots. But he was not the designated hard solution safety net the way we talk about true closers on a contender. That is not a knock, it is just what the system was. The winning logic for those Pistons was simpler and more brutal than what Boston ran 4 years later. They were not playing the game of we are tied late and I trust my best scorer to make a tougher shot than yours. That game only works when you have a true top-tier star, or at least a rugged, hard-to-disrupt scoring wing like Pierce. Detroit's logic was, we will make sure you score even less than we do. They leaned so heavily into defense that the gap between their offensive and defensive priorities was enormous, far wider than anything the 2008 Celtics experienced. Ben Wallace symbolized that identity more than anyone and anchored the defensive foundation. Billups, by contrast, neither built the system nor served as its final safety net. He was one ball-dominant pivot in a structure where impact was spread among the two Wallaces, Billups, Prince, and Hamilton. Nobody fully owned the floor on both ends the way a true foundational superstar does. So when you look at who could have won Finals MVP for those Pistons, it could have reasonably been Billups, Rasheed Wallace, or Ben Wallace. None of the three would have been a shock. The award landed on Billups, and he was a worthy choice, but it was a choice among near equals. Place these two stories side by side, Pierce had a teammate in Garnett who felt like the soul of the team, but in the finals, Pierce's scoring superiority and his functional clarity as the offensive sharp edge gave him a solid edge. Billups was the head of a multi-headed beast where the scoring and stopping were so spread out that 3 different players could have taken home the trophy without rewriting history. In a landscape of debated finals MVPs, Pierce's 2008 argument is the one that ends up feeling the most grounded. Not the most dramatic, not the most emotional, simply the most convincing.